All right, Carrie, you're on and we are recording. Carrie, you can unmute.
And I'll just say that I'm sorry about the background noises, but you're going to hear roosters and dogs and
Oh
stuff.
no, that's really cool. It's like the ambiance, you know. It's our pastoral setting.
Yeah, literally.
Well, welcome, Carrie. We're so excited that you're here to talk about Good Courage Farm. And I have heard about you for a while, and so I'm really anxious to hear it from you. There's a lot of media online about that. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the name of your farm comes from Deuteronomy 31:6.
It does. Yeah.
Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear nor be afraid of them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. The Lord your God will not leave you nor forsake you. What a beautiful way to set the intention for your place. Well, hello, Miss
Here's
Jen.
Jen. You got to
Come
scooch.
on over. Hi.
Could also turn this. Oh, there you go.
Well, that's Jen, Carrie's wife, and I'll let her do all the introductions. But we're really excited to meet you two, and I'm going to turn it over to you. And because you're co-host, you can share your screen whenever you're ready. And we'll try to leave some room for questions at the end, but
Yeah.
we like to be done by 10 so people can get ready, go get a drink, go to the bathroom, finish their Captain Crunch, and run off to church here. All right, so
Good deal.
blessings, and the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hello from Hutchinson. Um, Out here, we're about an hour and 20 minutes west of y'all, I would say, maybe a little bit more than that. Out here on the ancestral land of the Wapakute Mdewakanton Dakota people. And so we're thrilled to share with you a little bit about this agrarian ministry that we're hoping to cultivate together with you all here in ECMN and with the help of the Holy Spirit. So I'm Carrie Meyer, and I'm an ordained priest, and until we came back to Minnesota, Jen and I were both living in the Bay Area in California, and I served as the associate rector at St. Gregory of Nyssa Episcopal Church there in San Francisco. And I'll let Jen introduce herself.
Hi. Um, well, I'm on sabbatical this year, but I'm also still on the faculty at San Francisco State University. I teach geography and environmental studies with a focus on food systems, sustainable agriculture, waste reduction, food justice, like that. So I am doing a full time break this year, farming. But I'll be back to teaching in the fall. Probably a couple more years till I can retire. Um, and but I love fruit trees, and I've been gardening since I was a little kid. And I teach and think a lot about farming and soil, and I take students on field trips to visit farms. And so it was a pretty smooth slide into becoming a farmer.
In retirement.
Um, it's a little different than gardening, but
Yeah. When we lived in San Francisco, we had a very lovely life, and the work of our dreams. And yet, the Holy Spirit, who is always very busy, and sometimes kind of pushy, sort of invited us, I think, to consider cultivating an agrarian ministry. And those are two words that I don't think that folks would have put together before a couple of years ago. The idea of ministry and agrarianism being something that could be linked.
no,
But
I want to say we did live in Minnesota before. We
yeah,
weren't just like
we're from
from
here.
California and landed in Minnesota. We each lived in Minnesota, but mostly in the Twin Cities. So the Hutchinson part is new to us, and the farming part is new to us, but the Minnesota part isn't new to us.
So agrarian ministry is something that is deep in our roots as Episcopalians. Our tradition in the Church of England is very much an agrarian tradition. Coming soon, we're coming up on Rogation Days here at the end of April and the beginning of May. And deep in our tradition is this connection between our faith and our practices and our food and the land that provides us our food. And there's a renewal that's happening across the country, reconnecting our faith with our food. And folks are even sort of describing it as the Christian food movement. And we were part of it in the Bay Area because at St. Gregory's we have a food pantry, and those of you who are familiar with the books by Sarah Miles, we had a food pantry in our church that was very much connected with both our neighborhood and the liturgical life of our church. So the Christian food movement is really happening, and it was about a year ago, right at the beginning of COVID, that someone from the Diocese of Olympia in Washington started a Facebook group, and it's for Episcopal Agrarian Ministries. And they invited me to that group, and I thought, well, this is adorable. I wonder what 6 or 8 people might also be interested in connecting food and faith here in the Episcopal Church. And by the end of that week, there were 186 people.
There are?
That was at the end of that week last year. There were 186 people in this Facebook group, and now I think we crossed 1,000 people. And all across the country, there's this movement to reconnect the work of feeding one another, which is something that Jesus models in his whole ministry, is feeding people and sharing a table with people. And folks are saying, what if we started that work of feeding people right at the soil, right with the seed? And so this is really happening, and we boldly and foolishly, and we hope courageously, answered the Spirit's call to come and do this together with folks here in Minnesota. So,
speaking of food, I have to go get breakfast out of the oven. I'll be right back.
So, I bet breakfast is egg bake, because we are just up to our ears in eggs. If anyone needs eggs, you just come on out here to Hutch, because our girls are laying like crazy. So I'm gonna share my screen with y'all and show you some pictures.
I just posted the link to Sarah's books.
Sarah's books, yeah, very much about feeding as being at the heart of Jesus' ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to show pictures, so we're gonna show you some photographs of the farm, and we're kind of in transition. I sort of described it to Bishop Loya. I mean, this farm has been under operation as an organic fruit farm since 2016, and has been, growing fruit and selling it since 2013. And so we're sort of in this transition period from being just a mild-mannered organic fruit farm out in Hutchinson where folks can get black currants and gooseberries and other unusual things. And I feel like we're sort of ducking into a phone booth now during COVID. And when we pop out, it's going to be like, and also, surprise, we love Jesus and justice. And you can still get black currants here. So let's show you a little bit about the farm here. So we have 92 acres. Blessedly, only 18 of that is inside of our deer fence, and probably only about acres are currently under cultivation, and that is plenty of farming to start doing at midlife. And everything that we grow here is perennial. So everything has been put in the ground, or we're putting it in the ground, and it will yield fruit year after year without having to replant or reseed. And we have 170 varieties of mostly fruit, and in about a dozen major crops. And when Jen comes back, I'll tell you about the things that we grow. And we're out about 68 miles west of the edge of the cities there. and we're certified organic. So that's kind of the farmy part, and that's what people have known the farm for the last 5 to 8 years. And now we're cultivating a ministry, so that everything that we do here on the farm is at that intersection of food and farming, and most importantly, our faith. And so here's an aerial shot of the farm. I'll sort of mouse around. This is the boundary of our farm here. And 65 of our acres are in permanent wetland conservation easement, which means that it is forever protected from development, and it's a habitat for lots and lots of diverse native species who help us create a healthy ecology in which to grow food for our neighbors. So the purpose of our agrarian ministry is to cultivate a creation-affirming, Sabbath-making, justice-seeking Eucharistic community in close communion with the soil and with all our neighbors. And when I say all our neighbors, I mean both the folks out here in Hutch, where there are already plenty of churches, and our neighbors who are farmers here in rural Minnesota, and our neighbors who are the faithful of ECMN and other denominations, and also our neighbors who are not human. Our neighbors, the great horned owls and the sandhill cranes who pass through our wetland, and the leopard frogs who live here. So we want to cultivate a community with all our neighbors. And COVID kind of ruins everything, but COVID has actually been sort of a blessing in that it was a fallow season. And those of you who garden or come from farming families, you know that fallow seasons are absolutely necessary, because you have to let the ground rest and you have to sort of attend to what's happening on the land, so that in the next growing season, that fertility and that potential is restored. So this past year, we haven't done as much as we would have liked, because it hasn't been safe to gather in groups, but we did have an opportunity to gather with the folks of St. Anne's in Sunfish Lake. They came out and did sort of a pilot program with us, and we were all socially distanced and masked outdoors, and we did our first Bible study and family day on the farm. And I tell you, folks, there's just nothing like reading the parable of the vineyard while you are standing in a vineyard, and to talk about God, the vine dresser, there when you can see the results of last year's pruning. And I have the opportunity to preach a sermon to the whole diocese for the 5th Sunday of Easter coming up soon. And the text is the parable of the vineyard. And tending the vineyard, having to prune each year, having to decide which branches to keep and what gets burned, and what the future of this land is in terms of its fruitfulness, sure has opened up Scripture, and that's something that we want to share with everybody, is the opportunity to more deeply understand the parables about sheep and fig trees and grains of wheat, and all of Jesus' teachings, in which his metaphors are so very much connected to the earth and food. There's just nothing like opening up those teachings and those parables while in contact with the earth. And part of our work is also to seek and make justice, and we intend to grow food here so that we can share it with people who wouldn't otherwise have access to high quality, delicious, organically grown produce. So last fall, we got to take our first delivery of 250 pounds of first quality organic apples to our friends over at First Nations Kitchen in Minneapolis. And that's a partnership we look forward to deepening in the future. We're going to put in some crops for them this year to grow things for their indigenous-based food ministry that they have had trouble sourcing elsewhere. So Jen, I guess, is still making breakfast. Hey, do you want to come talk about the stuff we grow? Yeah. Jen will just tell you a little bit about what we grow, so that if you and your community there in Burnsville, or if the nonprofit partners that you are familiar with or connected with have a food ministry, there may be opportunities for the crops that we already grow to serve your food ministry, because we really hope to lay this farm, this land, and everything that it yields at the feet of the faithful here in Minnesota, and say, how can we together make good use of this land and everything that it grows. So Jen's going to tell you briefly about what we grow.
Hey there. So we have, I think, 14 different crop species. For tree fruits, we have apples and pears, and we're trying to grow plums and apricots. The last 2 years, we haven't gotten any, but maybe this year. We also have black currants, red currants, pink currants, white currants, and 8 varieties of gooseberries. We grow rhubarb, some strawberries. We are starting a bunch of raspberries this year. We have an acre of table grapes, 26 varieties of grapes. Sea berries, which are sea buckthorn.
They're the yellow ones up here in the corner.
They're a superfood, and you even see sea buckthorn oil in like cosmetics and stuff. They're kind of tart. I call them the lemons of Siberia, but they're very high in vitamin C, and if you add a little sugar, they're really richly delicious. They're also high in omega-3 fatty acids. Okay. And then we grow a couple things. Is that all the fruits?
Yeah. Did you mention asparagus and shiitakes?
We also grow a couple things that aren't fruits, which are asparagus and shiitake mushrooms, but they're perennials. So we planted them once, and they fit into the scheme. So
some of the crops that already existed here when we took the stewardship of the farm over, some of them I think are really readily helpful to food ministries in ECMN. Like, it was easy to take apples to our friends at First Nations Kitchen, and at Trinity Litchfield we have a free hot lunch program, and to take pears or to make rhubarb crisp is a pretty ready connection between what we're doing here and what folks might be doing in their food ministries across the state. Some of the things, it's going to be a little harder to figure out how to incorporate black currants and sea buckthorn berries into serving the Lord, but we trust people's creativity. We know that folks might have bake sales or make jam to share with folks, and so we invite you to join us in thinking creatively about how we can use some of those fruits. Meanwhile, we'll just continue to sell those to keep the farm open and the lights on. Honestly, we got really lucky. It's a beautiful little farm, and we have spaces that we want to use for community building. We have a beautiful finished barn for events, and that's where we actually hope to hold worship, is in our barn. And for those of us for whom that seems a little weird, I just think, well, Jesus was born in a barn. I think it's a pretty good idea to worship him in a barn. And we have a summer kitchen where folks can have, arrange for church potlucks and things like that. Over here on the left-hand side is the Well House, which is our little hermitage, where folks can come on spiritual retreat. It's a little standalone cabin, and so we want to open that to community leaders who need some rest and some Sabbath from their work in ministry or in community organizing, to come out and enjoy some rest surrounded by the beauty of God's creation. And this is our silo. It doesn't have a roof, but it has really good acoustics. It is a fine place to sing morning prayer, I have to say. So we're going to start doing morning prayer for the public on the farm starting June 1st. And we'll have outdoor morning prayer every weekday except Sundays. Here's just some images of the farm. We do have a hoop house that lets us extend the growing season in Minnesota about 6 weeks on the shoulders, so we can start things 6 weeks earlier in the spring and then keep them going about 6 weeks later in the fall, which helps a lot in our northern climate. We have a wood-fired oven, which makes some fine pizza. And it's also, we hope, a place where folks will be able to come and bake communion bread. I know that a lot of us in our communities might use the wafers for the Eucharist, but for places where we use loaves of bread, one of our hopes is that here at Good Courage, we will grow the wheat and the grapes to make the elements for sacraments here in ECMN, so that we can be there from the pruning of the vines and the harvesting of the grapes and make the sacramental wine together, and plant and bless the wheat and then harvest it together, and then grind it into the flour that folks can use to make bread for the Eucharist. And so we're looking for parishes who would like to partner with us in that work. We also have animals on the farm, because animals are a really important part of regenerative agriculture, and folks knew this pretty instinctively hundreds and thousands of years ago, that animals are sort of necessary to maintaining the fertility of the land. But as Wendell Berry, the farmer poet, describes it, we took agriculture, which used to have animals and crops integrated. We took that kind of elegant solution that God offered us, and we divided it neatly into two problems. And so now we have livestock agriculture done intensively, which is kind of inhumane in most of its forms, and
produces a lot of manure. That is a problem, like manure lagoons. And then what do you do with all of it?
Yeah. And then we have intensive monoculture plants growing separately, where you can't maintain the fertility of the land without inputs. And that ends up being a lot of stuff that's made from petroleum products and delivered through petroleum products. So the ecologies that God gave us in the created universe are pretty sustainable. They can kind of manage fertility and productivity indefinitely, but when we break them up into little pieces, it becomes a little bit harder to do that sustainably. We do not currently have cows. I need to take this photo out of here because it just keeps reminding Jen how much she wants cows. And I do most of the livestock chores here, so I'm not super excited about really big animals. But this year we're bringing on goats and probably maybe sheep next year. We have ducks and chickens, and they all do jobs on the farm. And not just laying eggs and providing milk, but the ducks do a fantastic job weeding the vineyard and eating the pests, the insects that would otherwise create problems in the vineyard. And their little flappy feet just kind of flatten the grass down into a nice mat of mulch. And the chickens spend most of the spring and early summer underneath our apple orchards, and they have reduced the pest pressure from a lot of the insects that would otherwise damage our apple and pear crops. So the animals have jobs, and they are partners with us in stewarding God's creation. So here's kind of the stuff that we're thinking about this coming year. It's still going to be kind of a pilot year because COVID is still with us, but we mean to continue and deepen our partnerships with existing food justice ministries that are happening in ECMN, like with First Nations Kitchen, and with food ministries and table churches like Table 229 out at St. Anne's. We hope that you there at Nativity and other parishes will want to come visit us. Get a group of people and carpool out here. We would love to worship together on the farm. We can celebrate Eucharist while you're here. And we're looking to partner with folks to share in the work of growing food for our neighbors. So if there's a parish that wants to adopt a row of apples and learn with us how to prune them, how to tend them, how to harvest them, and then share that food with neighbors, that's the kind of partnership that we're dreaming of. And again, Bible study on the farm is really a blessing. So we invite folks to come out for day retreats, and we can do immersion experiences. And we're hoping that parishes will want to work with us. We might start a CSA and make sure that part of that CSA is that families who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford a share can have one. We're going to have confirmation class on the farm this Wednesday night. And so we love to have youth groups out here. And again, we want to do wheat and wine for communion. And one of the things that the National Church is sort of looking at is how to offset the carbon footprint of church-related travel by having carbon offsets. And we'd like to be a site for that locally. And just to sort of wrap this up, I want to acknowledge that we did choose this name as you know, Kelly noted. We chose this name for this farm, Good Courage, because more than at any point in human history, it takes a lot of courage to choose to farm and to grow good food right now, because climate collapse is sort of upending all of the traditional solutions and systems that have worked in sustainable farming. There are new pests, there are weather extremes, and our neighbors, both our farmer neighbors and our neighbors who are creatures in creation, are experiencing a lot of change, and it's making it hard to grow good food. And so we ask you to just please hold us at Good Courage, and please hold all farmers in Minnesota in your regular prayers, to ask for God's wisdom and for the grace to change our ways as human beings, so that we might live in ways that are more sustainable in relationship with the rest of creation. And this is the prayer. These are our neighbors. These are some of our farmer neighbors and some of the things that live on the farm with us. Come out for firefly season. I have to say, firefly season out here is kind of mind-blowing. But this is the prayer that we took the name from, and again, it does come from Deuteronomy. But maybe today, when we close, we can share this prayer as a closing. So, all right, that's plenty of talking from us. We would love to just chat now about what about this speaks to you. What do you wonder? What have you noticed in your own life and in the connections between food, in your family life or your community life, and your faith?
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. It's so exciting. I just have a million questions in my head, and I'm sure I'm not alone with that. There's 21 of us on here, so I'm going to ask everybody to kind of turn on your camera if you can and wave, and then I'll kind of bounce you around and kind of moderate who gets to talk first. We have about 15 minutes, so we want to leave time for that prayer to Carrie. So, all right, who wants to go next? Okay, Cara.
I have a priest friend in Shakopee who would be extremely interested in your farm, and I am going to send her some information about you.
Excellent. Thanks for that connection.
Diane?
Hi, Carrie and Jan. We do have a what's called Community Cafe, and we serve a meal every Wednesday evening. And hopefully in the next, this summer or whenever, when we can gather that community again and start feeding people again, it would be great to partner with you. I would make rhubarb crisp in a minute.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a great possible connection. I love it.
Yeah, Phyllis?
When are the sea buckhorn thorn berries ripe? I would love to experiment with jam,
Mm-hmm.
but I would love to do that and be able to share it. But I have no knowledge of when they're even harvested.
I'd say the second half of August and beginning of September.
Yeah.
I will keep in touch.
Okay, we have a website and a little we have a Facebook page, and there's an online store. And so if you follow our Facebook page, Carrie posts when each new crop is coming up. She'll say, oh, next week we're going to be having black currants.
Yeah, and I'll say that so at the end of every season last year, we we did our best with the crew that we have here to harvest everything, but we always miss something, or we can't keep up with the fruit. And so last year we had gleaning. And actually gleaning is one of the commandments in Leviticus. Agriculturally, we're not meant to pick every last thing from our land and make a profit from it. That the edges and the corners are left to folks who wouldn't otherwise be able to access food from the land. And so do keep an eye out too, because if you have a crew of people who can come out and glean when we just can't pick anymore, that's pretty great too. And I'll say that I'm going to insert this too. One thing is I'm going to say that we had a stream of young adults come through this farm last year, because a lot of people's life maps kind of incinerated with COVID last year, especially folks in their 20s and 30s, who thought that they were going to go on to grad school or an internship or get a new job. So we had tons of young adults who came out to the farm, and many of those young adults are actually in formation for a vocation in the church. And so we've had this great intersection between folks who are able-bodied and can do the really physically demanding work of farming, but also who are trying to find a path for their faith in their life. But we have to pay those folks somehow. And one of the things that we're learning about small farming is that once you pay folks to actually pick the crops, you've pretty much
Used up all the money.
You've pretty much used up all the money. And that's the truth about agriculture, is that, it's a little more complicated than this, but land is only as profitable as you can make the labor cheap. And that's why we have an immigration crisis in this country. It's more complicated than that. And talk to Jen, because she's a professor. But yeah, so we are still selling fruit because we have to pay the mortgage on this farm. But we're trying to imagine ways that we can transition into having everything in this farm contribute to the nonprofit ministry. But right now it's sort of like a mix of things that keep the lights on and things that directly serve God's people.
We have a question from somebody's iPad. Jenny writes in from, how did we get to your farm? Can we get eggs tomorrow? We are going to a funeral in Wilmer in the afternoon. Thanks.
Yeah, and I did respond privately to Jenny, but
okay,
yeah.
good.
Jane,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't
Janie,
read
yeah.
what this is on. Yeah, stop by, give us a call. We should, before the end, Carrie, give your phone number.
Yeah.
But yeah, come on out. We have lots of eggs.
So many eggs.
And we're, you can either come out, where is Burnsville? You can come out 212 through Glencoe or 7 through kind of Minnetonka. And we're kind of in between those.
I'll be the contact, so if anybody has any questions, they can just ask me, and that way you don't get 75 million emails.
We're here
But
all the time.
oh, there it is. Thank you for the address and stuff. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, maybe we just we want to know. And then of course Dana's all on board. There's like field trip time, so we're already thinking about that too.
I saw a couple other hands earlier.
Yeah, there
I
were
think Christina and
Other
Aaron.
ideas, questions?
Christina?
I was just waving to Erin. I think she
Oh.
was just waving to me. But how do you amend your soil to get good production?
Well, we're working on it. So one of the big picture things is with the animals. It's just the more diverse manures that you can get on the soil, it not only like provides nutrients, but it invigorates the soil with microorganisms that then go on to like have this multiplier effect. But we're still building up our flocks. We're doubling or tripling our chickens this year, and doubling or tripling our ducks, and we just got the goats, so that's still not at full capacity. We're trying to. Another big project is most of the trees and bushes have plastic, sheet plastic underneath them to try to keep weeds down. And it accomplishes a couple things, but I think it inhibits some of the soil health cycles. So we're going to be doing a big project of removing that plastic and putting down a lot of wood chips. And especially for trees and perennial crops, they like that kind of fungally dominated compost world and slow release nutrients. Trees like that kind of self-made fungal compost. We do make compost on the farm, but not nearly in volume enough to spread it over acres. Last year, we have a dairy farmer neighbor who brought over 4 or 5 manure spreader loads of his cow compost or cow manure, and we're composting that. And then we have been subscribing to a program of soil inoculation. So I spray kind of magical solutions of like microbes and molasses on the soil and various humates and stuff to try to kind of jumpstart the soil life. And we are doing soil testing to see what we're particularly lacking. So I've applied a bunch of mineral salts and some sulfur because our pH is too high, and we can talk more about the specifics. But anyway, we're trying to overall in the big picture build up the organic matter. It's not terrible. We're at 4.5% organic matter, but we'd like to get to like 6+.
We're very interested in hearing about that because we do have a community garden, but we haven't figured out what we're going to do with it yet this year. So that's why lots of conversations about that.
More compost.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, right. Right.
I used to have a friend, or I've had a friend who used to have as her tagline on all her firm emails, like her name, and then her tagline was it "If in doubt, add compost," or whatever if in doubt, add compost.
And I mean, that's something that's really happening here in Minnesota is farmers are recognizing that soil is the foundation of everything. And folks are sort of realizing, like, I don't grow fruit. I grow soil, and then the soil and God's genius grows fruit. So folks across Minnesota are really turning their attention to restoring our soil, which is some of the finest agricultural soil on the entire planet.
Mm-hmm. I find it such a spiritual lesson about that which has been cast away, that which is undesirable, that which comes from the bowels, literally, has a resurrection as some other new life form, or is sustainable and definitely interconnected. And wow, if that's not a metaphor for you, Chris, I don't know what is.
That'll preach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rick, did you have a question or was it answered?
He's trying to unmute. Hey, Rick, you're
I
still
didn't know.
muted.
I don't know. I didn't know if I could unmute myself or not. Otherwise, I would have. Um, you can hear me now. Okay.
Yep.
You were talking about rejuvenation. I was just curious. Are you looking at adding maybe any cover crops that have different benefits to rejuvenation?
Yeah. I love cover crops. An interesting part about like the orchard and that it's all perennials is we don't have any bare soil. So all the orchards already have sort of grasses and things growing in the alleys between them. And so the good news is there's no bare soil except like the garden, like the home garden and one little plot that we're trying to get ready to have berries grown in it, but everything else is covered. So I am doing a little bit of overseeding to try to change the makeup of that mix. And as if we plant new orchards, we might choose different mixes to put in there. But there's kind of very little open ground. I wish we could kind of do more cover cropping, but and what's in there is a lot of prairie grass, and so it is vigorous. Those huge root systems that go down like 20 feet. So you can't. You would have to plow. It's challenging.
I was going to say that I have a small farm I inherited, and I've got waterways and other ditches, and the same issue. I'd like to try some unique plants, but I sure don't want to back off the plants that are there that do a fairly good job of controlling weeds, or at least contribute to that process.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point. I've got some area where there's a little erosion at the end of the field where the end rows go downhill, but with the low impact farming, that's pretty minimal. For those in the Twin Cities, I'm not sure this is a good option or not anymore, but Prince of Peace in Burnsville, because of other needs, we were forced to give up our garden area that had been enhanced over years and was fairly fruitful, the soil, into basically what was a dump site for a construction waste. We had a big challenge. The person who was singularly dealt with this issue, a lady by the name of Lynette Cadillac, who was the beginning of our creation care activities, she actually got a truckload of horse manure from the fairgrounds, but the racetrack. I'm not sure how ready that is. The other thing, of course, you got that kind of fertilizer, you got to be careful how you use it and let your ground lie fallow for a while. But it sure made an impact on improving the soil quality. Just a thought.
Yep.
Well, I'm aware that we're at the end, so I was wondering if you'd like to lead us in that prayer that you had posted earlier.
Yeah. We can pray this together.
Thank you so much, Carrie,
Thanks, y'all. It's
for
been really good
for
to
coming.
Yeah, come on out to the farm, please do. It's a lovely place to get outdoors and just kind of have some space. So
I think our rector Dana is on that. She's thinking already. I know she is.
awesome. Let us pray. O God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you definitely are in our prayers. I can see the smiles and the excitement on everybody, like Valley Fair is about to open. For us earth-hugging, tree-hugging, creation care folk. I want to thank Diane for spearheading this month's theme of Restoring the Earth, which is the Earth Day theme. And we definitely, want to look at the future and our relationship with you. And, thank you for serving the church in your capacity as a priest, but also as farmers. And thank you for your joint ministry. It's very sweet to see a family continuing the efforts that have been there at that land. Is there anything else you guys would like to add?
No, Jen's typing something in the chat.
Okay.
No, just lovely to be with you all. And please, if you have ideas, if like the Spirit moves and you're like, you know what that farm could do, like tell us, because we can't think of all the things alone, and we can't do all the things alone. And even just come out to the farm and just look, because our eyes alone aren't enough to see all of the promise that God has in store. So
And we think of a million cool projects that could happen, and it's going to take a million cool people's hands to do them. But if you feel inspired, if you have a weekend or something, if you're like a woodworker or a cook or who knows what, you like to run a riding lawnmower, I don't know. Anyway, there's something for everybody to like come out and do for.
Have hard hat and gloves will travel.
yes, correct.
Well, you guys are welcome to join us online for services. I sent you the link, but I understand you might not be ready for that today, but they are available later on our YouTube channel.
Thanks. We'll be sure to check that out. We are the e-vergers for Trinity Litchfield. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, and God bless your ministry, and we look forward to seeing you later.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Blessings on your day.
Ellie, I just wanted to welcome Rick, who is from our Interfaith Creation Care group. So thanks for joining us, Rick.
Yeah.
Very enjoyable. Thank you for bringing it up to us.
Thank you, Diane. All right, everybody. See you in the sanctuary. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank
We'll
you very
talk soon.
much. So excited. So excited, like a little kid. Great.
Good.
I'm so excited. I'm like, sheep, good yoga, yeah!
Come on out.
All right,
Goats,
talk to you soon.
baby goats. That's
All
all.
right.
Baby goats. Oh my goodness.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.